All right, happy Friday and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for the 16th day of May, 2025, the third of 5 Fridays this month, and National Bike to Work Day, created in 1956, believe it or not, by the League of American Cyclists to promote the bicycle as a healthy and environmentally friendly means of travel. According to the U.S. Census, roughly 10% of American workers ride a bike to work daily. It's probably a little more than what I would have thought, which could burn up to 500 calories unless you're riding like for hours. Oddly enough, today is also National Work From Home Day, which is a much bigger percentage of American workers. And if that's you, maybe take a bike ride today while you're acting like you're home working. President Trump is headed home from his historic, unprecedented 4-day Middle East economic tsunami, and I'll get to that, but I want to get right into this James Comey thing. Okay, this is not about the alleged $16 million payment that I mentioned the other day, but a social media post. 8647. Unless you just woke up from a coma, you likely heard about this by now. Here's Greg Kelly.
Sometimes it's hard to believe that the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, was actually led by a guy named Jim Comey, the worst person who's ever worked in federal government in my book, and damn near a criminal. Looks like to me he committed a crime this afternoon. In addition to all the Russian hoax stuff, right? I mean, some bad stuff there. But this is just creepy and weird and most likely a violation of law. All right, this is Comey's Instagram account, 8647. Does that mean anything to anybody? The code is 86, which means get rid of, do away with, throw out, get rid of, right? The 47th president of the United States. Let me see that one more time. 8647. He was just walking around. There, right there. He says he was walking around, saw a cool formation of shells on my beach walk. Number one, what the hell is he doing walking on the beach? What is it? It was like 1 in the afternoon on a Thursday. See, Rich Comey he's rich. And Jim Comey is very, very rich, very well funded, has this, the proverbial screw you money. But this is a crime because, how do you get rid of President Trump? Right? How do you get rid of President Trump? Impeach him? You can't. The Republicans have a majority. Do you defeat him at the ballot box? No, he can't run for president again. What do you have in mind there when you say get rid of the 47th president of the United States? I think he's talking about killing the man. Yes, like they already tried in Butler, Pennsylvania. 2 assassination attempts, and the former FBI director wants another one. He is the deepest of the deep state characters, this Comey. And they have already given themselves the moral and, believe it or not, I think they had the legal justification to take Trump out. I mean, the vice president of the United States said it out loud.
In our nation's 246-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump.
And I never realized this before, but the day before President Trump was shot, July 13th, 2024, then President Joe Biden came out. This was the night before the assassination attempt. Joe Biden, let's hear that one.
And despite that some folks don't seem to care who you voted for, well, guess what? They're trying to push me out of the race. No! Well, let me say this as clearly as I can. I'm staying in the race. I'll beat Donald Trump. I will beat him again in 2020.
All right. Sorry about that, folks. That's July 5th. A week later, he did say on July 12th that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. And that kind of talk is dangerous. And it's one thing when it comes from, that weirdo in West Palm Beach who went to Ukraine and everything like that. But this is from the former director of the FBI, the present director of the FBI, Kash Patel, an American hero, posted this. We are aware of the recent social media posts by former FBI Director James Comey, directed at President Trump. We are in communication with the Secret Service and Director Curran. primary jurisdiction is with the Secret Service on these matters, and we, the FBI, will provide all necessary support. So they're going to go down there and question him at the very least, hopefully throw the handcuffs on him. There are laws that prevent people from threatening the President of the United States. 8647, that's the message. It's an old restaurant term. Get rid of, cancel the ham and eggs. 86, the ham and eggs. The guy wants tuna fish. Well, in this context, I think it means kill. Now, what did Comey say about all this? He put out a statement himself. I posted earlier a picture of some shells I saw today on the beach, which I assume were a political message. I don't believe him right there. I think he arranged that stuff. I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down. He's nervous. Now, then again, he's coming out with a book next week. Is this a great big plot for, attention, book publicity stuff? I don't know, but it's wrong. It's horrible. Jim Comey, man, oh man, oh man. You know what they should do? Well, when they question him, take very careful notes, because the moment he lies to the FBI, right, you commit a crime. He set perjury traps for senior Trump administration officials like Michael Flynn. Probably catch him in a perjury trap, but we're better than that, right? Right.
Comey almost immediately deleted the post and then posted that he didn't initially realize the potential meaning of the 86 and sort of attempted to apologize a little bit. Greg spoke about it with Texas Senator and attorney Ted Cruz.
Welcome back, Senator. And what do you think of this?
Well, look, I think James Comey was a bad head of the FBI. I think he wanted to be J. Edgar Hoover. I think when Donald Trump came in, I think he waged war against President Trump from the very first day the president came into office in his first term. You know, I wrote an entire book called Justice Corrupted, How the Left Has Weaponized Our Legal System, that laid out exactly how the deep state, and James Comey was Exhibit A of the deep state, actively tried to undermine the president, to overthrow the president. They were angry at the American people for electing him. And I do think in hindsight, I think the president would tell you it was a mistake that he did not fire James Comey on January 20th, 2017. I think history would have been very different if Comey had been relieved of duty the very first day of the Trump presidency.
Can't believe they started that whole Russia thing about firing. It was instigated by the termination. They were investigating Trump for firing the FBI director. But on this thing, 8647, I mean, I'm sorry. And you heard some prominent people for years saying Donald Trump is a clear and present danger to American democracy. Yeah. Dick Cheney said the number one danger to the republic ever. They seem to have given themselves the moral and legal justification. It's nonsense, but to do something horrible to President Trump. Is this a violation of the law as you see it, putting a message out there in public like that?
You know, look, we'll have to examine the full details and the context in which it was given, but there's no doubt that much of the deep state, including James Comey, hated Donald Trump, and they acted to undermine him. They acted to stop and frustrate the agenda that he was elected to implement. And there's also no doubt that the extreme rhetoric we see from the left contributes to this atmosphere of violence, to the threats. You know, President Trump faced multiple assassination attempts, including obviously being shot by a would-be assassin in Butler, Pennsylvania. I got to say, by the way, Greg, I've never seen a moment of heroism quite like when the president, after being shot, comes up and has his fist in the air and saying, fight, fight, fight. That was, if you were not inspired by that, then I don't understand how you're wired, because that was amazing to see.
It really was. But actually, on that note, Senator, sometimes I feel like, let's face it, that was a net plus, right? For President Trump politically. Everybody saw his bravery under fire. We also saw the incompetence of certain aspects of the government. And I feel like we don't have all the answers. And quite frankly, some of the questions haven't even been asked. Now, you were brilliant in your cross-examination.
And by the way, look, you walk into the Oval Office, and right outside the Oval Office, number one, the picture right outside the door of the Oval Office is the president's mugshot, because that was the weaponization of the legal system where the Democrats were trying to stop the voters from reelecting him. That failed. And then right outside that is a painting of him standing with his fist in the air, and it's got lots of blood going down his face. And it's a powerful, like those two combinations, when you're in the White House going into the Oval, those two, that picture and that painting, they tell a story.
Senator Ted Cruz on Greg Kelly Reports. If you're on any social media, you've seen by now that everyone, I mean every Republican politician, conservative media people, conservative Americans have commented on this. It literally blew up social media. And I wanted to read you just one of the many, many great comments. This from Vivek Ramaswamy, who wrote on X, "Consider if Trump's FBI director had posted the same thing about a leading Democrat, and ask yourself what mainstream media would be saying about it. Yes, he deleted the post, but the double standard is the most glaring aspect of it." That's verbatim from @Vivek Ramaswamy. The mainstream media hasn't said anything about it so far. And if you've been paying attention, they've barely even reported on President Trump's Middle East tour other than mentioning that he's there. They certainly haven't showed highlights of the Arabian horse escorts, the fighter jet escorts, American flags flying everywhere, the Trump rally in Qatar. Did you see that? Before leaving the UAE this morning, which was the middle of the night for most of us, right, the president attended a business summit with some of the United Arab Emirates' top leaders in energy, healthcare, and aviation.
We're making great progress toward a $1.4 trillion that UAE has announced that it intends to spend in the United States over the next couple of years.
Donald Trump has become the first U.S. president to visit the UAE in nearly 30 years. And here's a bit of a recap on Newsmax's American Agenda with Katrina Zish, Bob Brooks, and a panel of guests.
All right, here now with reaction, former New York Congressman Anthony D'Esposito, along with lawyer and Republican strategist Ford O'Connell, and journalist and the author of Second Class, Batya Ungar-Sargon. All right, Batya, I'm going to start with you here. Quite a long list of positives that Trump has been able to accomplish. Let's not even talk about in his 4.5 months in office, but in these past 3, almost 4 days. I mean, again, as we said, even some of his biggest critics are saying, wow, this guy gets stuff done.
You know how you can tell that this is a world-altering, historic trip that Trump has just taken? Because there is a complete media blackout about it on the liberal channels and in the liberal media. They are simply refusing to cover it because it is that momentous. President Trump just accomplished something I did not think I would see in my lifetime, and I think we're going to look back on this moment as the beginning of not just a golden era for the United States, but for the world. He effectively threw out the sort of neoconservative consensus of nation building and exporting American values, into the Middle East of the Bush era, but also the Obama era insistence that everybody wants what we have and everybody shares our values, even in these Muslim countries. Neither of those things are good or true. What Trump said was, I have one priority. It is the sons and daughters of the American working class. And I am going to go to the ends of the earth to make sure that they no longer get fed into the maw of pointless wars, and that all of these countries that are so wealthy take all of those trillions of dollars, $3 trillion, and invest them back here in America's working class. That is what the president just did. It is historic and world-altering and nation-altering. The only nation we're building now is this one, and we're going to look back on this as the moment that it started.
Congressman, also it brings stability to that region just as well. You create trade deals with the United States. Well, now you're going to get the United States, the stability, the partnership throughout that region. I mean, it's pretty big on the global stage.
It's absolutely, quite frankly, I mean, I don't know how you don't watch
what's unfolded over the last 4 days and not be such a proud, patriotic American. And to your point, you're exactly right. That's why the left-wing media is not reporting on it, because they don't want people to see President Trump's success. And quite frankly, they're not even sure how to report on it, because it's almost impossible to criticize this. But yet, I really wish I just came from D.C., and I wish some members of Congress on the Democratic side and those in the Senate would watch this and realize how important and how historic this is, instead of Democrats realizing, wow, this is a time for America. This is the beginning of the golden age.
How you could be against it.
They're too busy writing articles of impeachment. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, Ford, I'm sure that you have similar thoughts here, but also I think the fact that this is a president, a man who is, I will say, fearless, has no problem saying, all right, it's been done this way for however many decades. I don't care. It's not working. Change it. And then just sit tight, chill out, and wait for things to turn around. Of course, I'm referencing the tariffs there. But he's been doing that across the board with pretty much everything. And to me, a fearless leader is exactly what America needs.
Well, that's exactly right. An outside-of-the-box president took an outside-of-the-box approach to the Middle East, and it's working beyond anyone's expectations. You're going to have $3 to $4 trillion in U.S. investment, to Batya's point, but he believes that peace in the Middle East can be achieved by prosperity and stability. And frankly, it's all about having a prosperous Saudi Arabia working with Israel. And let me tell you, he says we could have an Iran nuclear deal. If that does indeed occur, and we do have stable peace in the Middle East, he should get the Nobel Peace Prize.
Republican strategist Ford O'Connell on Newsmax. And what did Trump say at the start of the trip? Commerce, not chaos, right? That was kind of the way the White House tagged it. Commerce, not chaos. And I love what Batya said at the beginning of that segment. The only nation we're building now is this one. How true and how great is that? The only nation we're building now is this one. I absolutely love it. If I had the time and the know-how, I would put that on T-shirts. If you make T-shirts, you have a company, DM me on X, @radio_Marino. Let's do it. In 4 days, the president secured $3 trillion worth of investment for the United States. Before leaving Abu Dhabi, President Trump also talked about the Russia-Ukraine war this morning as officials meet with Russian and Ukrainian leaders in Turkey today.
Zelensky was going, and I said, if I don't go, I guarantee Putin's not going. And he didn't go, and I understand that, but we're going to get it. We're going to get it done. We got to get it done. We got to stop the killing. 5,000 people a week, 5,000 young people a week on average being killed in a war that is going nowhere. It's a shame. Should have never happened.
Ukrainian President Zelensky and Russian President Putin are not attending today's meetings. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is pretty much leading up the entire delegation. He said he doesn't have high expectations of anything really happening today, saying that that's only going to happen when President Trump meets with Putin. More from Bianca De La Garza.
Let's bring in now my next guest, Victor Davis Hanson, Hoover Institution Senior Fellow, author of many great books, including The End of Everything, How Wars Descend into Annihilation. Victor, it is always great to see you. So here we have a situation where Vladimir Putin is the one who had suggested these talks. Now he's a no-show. Now you have Trump saying nothing's going to happen until I go. There's been a lot of success this week in the Middle East. There's been success apparently with Iran. This one's the toughest one. What do you think it's going to take for Putin actually to make good and get to a negotiating table?
I think he feels that Donald Trump initially was not going to pressure him to the same degree he was going to pressure Zelensky. And I think now he's afraid that Trump may in fact do that. But his biggest problem is that he doesn't feel that he has enough justification to go back to Moscow and tell the Russian people that he lost 1 million dead, wounded, and missing in a war that maybe got him reification or institutionalization of what he already had, Crimea and Donbass, and a pledge that Ukraine would not join NATO, and then maybe 30 to 40 miles westward from where he started. And I don't think he feels that that's enough to justify the horrendous mistake he made. And so he's going to try to get some concessions from Donald Trump. I don't think he's going to get any, because I don't think his military...
Well, I don't either.
Yeah, his military is not able to take Ukraine, and it's only able to defend what it's got now, and that's where he is.
And that's a scary proposition, because that is exactly what Marco Rubio is saying. This will not end, in a military fashion here. So if he can't, Putin, sell this to his home audience, like you said, for the mistake he made, in a way, then he needs the war to go on. But no one in the West wants this war to go on. And there may be some very serious sanctions that are coming. We've seen already with the Europeans. So who's his lifeline? I guess it's still China and Iran.
Yeah, I don't think he has really a lifeline. I don't think he has the wherewithal after losing 1 million casualties and over 1,000 tanks and more, actually, much more, to go any further west. And so I think he feels that he's going to bleed out what he has there, and he's looking for an out, some ramp and some concession that he can go back and say, at least I got this. Maybe they won't join the EU, or there will be a demilitarized zone where there won't be Western peace, but something. And I don't know if he's going to get it. And yet he can't go on and he can't stop. And that's his dilemma.
Victor Davis Hanson on Newsmax. So Putin is in a major jam, got himself into a rock and a hard place. 1 million casualties. And that's only the Russians. So that's happening again today, and the consensus is nothing substantial is going to happen until Trump meets with Putin, right? And Trump did say that he would end the war on day one. So hopefully the meeting will happen very soon. All right, let's turn our attention to Capitol Hill, where the focus remains the one big, beautiful bill. We heard a lot from House Speaker Johnson yesterday. This is Senator Marsha Blackburn on Newsmax.
Senator, great to see you this morning. Where do you stand on what you've seen so far?
I stand for getting President Trump's agenda across the finish line. That is what the American people voted for on November 5th. They want to see change. They want us to get spending under control and to be good stewards of their tax dollars. And I want to see more cutting. I want to see reductions in spending. It's appropriate that we go back to a pre-COVID spending level and make certain that we're reducing this out-of-control, wasteful spending. In the Senate, I think we can get there. I'm looking forward to the House finishing their product and sending it across to those of us in the Senate.
Yeah, Senator, going back to pre-COVID level spending, that sounds awfully similar to your colleague Ron Johnson's call, who's going to join us here later in this hour. He compared this current bill to the Titanic and says he thinks it's going down like a sinking ship in the Senate. I mean, have you spoken to him? Are you on board with what he believes we've got to get back to that pre-COVID level spending?
He and I are both members of the steering committee, which is conservatives in the Senate, and he and I are both members of finance. And of course, there is a way for us to do this, and it's a way for us to look at programs working out waste, fraud, and abuse. You know, you actually strengthen Medicaid when you root out the waste, fraud, and abuse, when you make certain that it's targeted to the individuals that deserve those benefits. You strengthen and bolster Medicare and Social Security when you get rid of things like improper payments and when you get fraudsters out of these programs. We know that there are people that claim to be 150 years old who are fraudulently getting Social Security checks. We know that there are 1.3 million illegal aliens who are getting health care through the Medicaid program, who are receiving Social Security benefits. These are things that need to be cleaned up. So this is a great opportunity for us to dig deep, to look at these programs, to root out the abuse, the waste, the fraud that has existed in these, and get President Trump's agenda across the finish line. And by the way, we've got this big, beautiful bill. We could do another big, beautiful bill in the fall for even more savings. We could do a third big, beautiful bill next year this time and even triple up on President Trump's savings, regardless of how long it takes, how many bills it takes. The goal is to honor the American people and their desire to see change in how the United States of America manages their tax dollars.
Tennessee Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn on Wake Up America. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong, but I think President Trump said about a month ago or so, 2 bills, 3 bills, whatever, just get it done, right? Senator Blackburn reiterated most of what we heard Mike Johnson say yesterday about Medicare and Social Security fraud. Social Security disability is one of the biggest forms of Social Security fraud, aside from the illegals collecting Social Security. And I've mentioned this before. Talk to anybody. Almost everyone knows someone, at least one person, if not more, that is collecting Social Security disability when they shouldn't be, right? Same with Medicare. Maybe it's someone in your family, maybe it's somebody at work, maybe it's a neighbor. Meanwhile, I turned on Morning Schmo for a minute, and right away, what are they talking about? Republicans are cutting your Social Security. Yeah, they're cutting your Social Security, not even cutting it. They're taking away your Social Security if you are wrongly collecting it. Senator Blackburn and other Senate Republicans voted down a resolution yesterday against President Trump's El Salvador deportations. In a 45-50 vote along party lines, the measure from Foreign Relations Committee, sponsored by Senator Tim Kaine, was halted. Yes, Hillary Clinton's former running mate. Kaine, in a floor speech prior to the vote, said the resolution for more information on the deportations was necessary because President Trump has entered into an agreement with El Salvador that is, quote, still shrouded in secrecy. And it looks like 6 more illegal aliens will be on their way to El Salvador. This should be getting a lot more national attention than it is. Hopefully it will. In Rock Hill, South Carolina, right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, where I used to work, a beautiful part of the country. Rock Hill, a beautiful middle-class suburb. 6 young illegal aliens from Honduras, 13 to 21 years old. 6 of them have been arrested for the random murder of a woman. Larisha Sherelle Thompson, a mother of 2, who was shot to death in her own car so they could rob her. The 6 illegals are also charged with the robbery of a convenience store. This is a huge story, I'm sure, in Charlotte, but why isn't it anywhere else? According to Homeland Security, one of the 6 had been arrested in 2023, of course, for domestic violence. Larisha Sherelle Thompson. Say her name. A mother of 2. On Wall Street, the final trading day of the week started in the green. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies also slightly higher this morning. At the time of recording, Bitcoin was up a little more than $500, around 103,600 and change. So President Trump is expected to arrive back at the White House late tonight. All eyes are also on Capitol Hill today and the Russia-Ukraine talks in Turkey. Keep up with all of the news throughout the day and all weekend long on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com. Also, make sure you have the app so you can stay up to date anywhere, anytime, especially on the weekend when you're hopefully, out doing the things you love to do. It all starts each and every morning with Wake Up America. That includes Wake Up America Weekend Edition beginning at 7 a.m. America Right Now, Saturday and Sunday agenda, Michael Savage, documentaries, special programming, and much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for the download and the listen. We also have another weekend of NHL and NBA playoffs on deck. The Preakness is tomorrow, and then NASCAR in North Wilkesboro, North Carolina on Sunday. Have a great weekend, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.